Hi, welcome to the first episode
Oh my
of.
god.
Oh my!
Oh my god.
Turn that down.
Fuck, dude.
Well, yeah, like I said, welcome to the first episode of
Dog shit.
Water Level, the Water Level podcast.
I hate this intro.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. You know, it's live.
It's so bad.
What are you gonna do about it?
Welcome.
It was he came up with the name.
It was a team effort that was
You're right,
obviously equal participation.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it was for sure the name I came up with.
Yeah, you did come up with that name. Yes.
It's a great name. It's much better than Jan and Gables.
Jan and Gables was
Horrible.
definitely my fallback option.
Terrible.
In case, in case we just couldn't come up with anything. But we did. And look, we got the looking glass night here. It's not centered. Or the pillow's not centered. Oh, shit.
Of Orange Lake Castle.
Yeah, this is going to be way worse live. For sure.
Yeah, because we can't edit out this part.
Well, we can. Just not, for the
Not
people.
live.
Yeah, not live. We'll do live editing. Dude, if they can turn football into Toy Story football live, then I think we can figure some stuff out.
My dad, so the commercial for that game was on. My dad goes, "Oh, you gonna watch that?" And I was like, "Oh, it kind of actually sounds kind of funny. Like, wouldn't mind watching it." He's like, "It starts at 6:30 in the morning." I'm like, what the fuck?
Jesus Christ.
Because it's for the London game, one of the London games this year. I think they're doing like 4.
But that would also be 6:30 our time, right? So Eastern.
Yeah, East
for
Coast
them,
is gonna
it's okay.
have it. Yeah, East Coast it's at 9:30.
But still, it's like,
whatever.
hey, this is for kids, right? Like, do you want that? Like, hey, first thing in the morning? I guess so,
it's
yeah.
on Sunday morning, so I think it's supposed to be for like you're a parent and you care about the content that your kid watches, but you want to be involved in their lives, but you also don't want to do anything other than what you already want to do, and you don't go to church. So Sunday morning, hey son, let's watch Toy Story football together.
Dude, I'm just imagining like injuries happening, and it's like fucking like their leg is all like bent, with, like the fluff coming out.
Like when Woody gets all fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, dude, that would be so good. And they show on the replay, and the toys are like
stuffings like flying out of them when
dude,
they get
holy
tackled.
shit! It could be like amazing.
Yeah, it won't be.
I mean, I'm not gonna watch it live, but I'm definitely interested to see people post clips on TikTok and shit.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be like the SpongeBob stuff they did last year.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
What was that? Oh, where like Patrick was the announcer and
yeah, he was the broadcaster.
Oh,
he
yeah,
was
the
calling the
broadcaster.
play-by-plays.
yeah,
That was terrible. So I'm sure this.
Oh,
will be
was it?
too. Yeah.
yeah. I didn't. I only saw like a couple of clips from that, and it wasn't anything. Yeah, so welcome to Water Level,
We did this.
a video game podcast where we talk about football and Toy Story. Apparently,
I'm gonna talk about the games I was playing first, and like get through some of them,
fucking full. Jesus.
and then you can take over, and then
Okay.
I'll do more. Because I played a bunch of shit this week.
Oh yeah, I only played one game, so that makes sense.
Yeah. What the games I played up more of this week were fucking Nioh and Sea of Stars. Have you seen anything about Sea of Stars? Do you know anything about that?
Barely. Yes, I have seen some, but like I think literally just a trailer.
Okay. So I'll start with Sea of Stars because I'm really struggling with that game.
Oh yeah.
It's really weird. Like, it's supposed to be like a really old school JRPG in the way that it's like presenting everything that it is.
Oh, I didn't realize it was a JRPG at all.
Yeah, it's like
I thought it was like a fishing game.
it's a JRPG. So yeah, you really didn't know much about it. JRPG with like the action timed like shit in battle. So it's like, hold the
like
button,
Final
release at the
Fantasy,
right time, Paper Mario,
whatever,
all sorts of games. Yeah. That part of the game is okay. That's like, whatever. The combat feels fine. The pixel art in the game looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
The art that's not pixel art, like the character portraits and like some of the cutscene stuff, I don't.
Is it like a different art style, like anime aesthetic or something like that?
It's not like full on anime, but it's a different
It's
aesthetic.
like a cartoony aesthetic versus
Yeah.
pixel.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just doesn't look as good as the pixel art. I think looks really solid.
I actually think I saw that.
The JRPG stuff, like the fighting in the game works fine. Like it feels good. The moves look cool. It's just like, and like the narrative structure of the game might be okay. I don't know yet. Like the story so far, spoilers for Sea of Stars for the first 3 hours of the game. But like, it starts and you're like, oh, we're on this like mission to like finish our education. Basically, we're the Solstice Warriors. It's you can pick your character. You can be the guy or the girl. But it doesn't matter. You're like in the party together. It just changes who leads. And like they say, when you're selecting a character, like you can change this at any time. It doesn't matter. So it's like, okay. So you pick one of them and like you go and you do a couple fights or whatever. And then immediately after doing like a couple fights where they introduce you to all the mechanics of the game, it's like flashback. You're 8 years old. And here's like a 2-hour sequence of like just walking around and talking to people and doing nothing. And
sounds like being 8.
It's really not super good, like the introduction, and then the writing is like bad. Like you're in that introductory sequence 3 separate times, and like it's like maybe 2 hours, hour and a half, 1 hour, like it's somewhere in that block.
Just listening to it makes me want to kill myself.
3 separate times, like a character like wistfully like oh, the kids are talking, like your group comes up to people and talks to them and leaves, and like 2 people turn to each other and are like, those kids don't know what potential they have.
Jesus.
And then there's one where like a guy like turns around and like he's talking to the kids and he turns around and then like the text in parentheses like, if only they knew the potential they had. And then it happens again and
just
it's like, dude,
like
this
so
sequence,
on the nose.
it's so on the nose. And like there's this whole sequence in the intro where it's like your characters, like the kids are like, oh, let's go try to open the lunar door again. And they go and they try to open the door. And like the girl, like she gets it this time. And she opens it. And it's like, okay, so why didn't you like insinuate that was a thing that meant like, oh, like you did that like way earlier than you were supposed to. Like that would imply that you had a lot of potential. They even have a throwaway line. Like after you complete the tutorial, it's not even a tutorial. They don't teach you how to do anything in that section of the game. It's just like narrative introduction with terrible writing, where it's like, oh, we like in order to graduate you have to they had to sew every day and they had to like imbue a cloth with their will or something, and so they finally do it after like 8 years and they're like, oh, we I think we've got it, we finished it. And they go to the headmaster guy and like they're in a school and there's no students, it's just them and the headmaster and one girl who washes the floors, which is also weird. And there's like a bunch of beds and it's like, what's going on here? So like there might be narrative structure around that they like haven't gotten to yet, or maybe it was like in books that I didn't read on the shelves or something. But you take to the headmaster and they're like, oh, we're done. And he's like, oh yeah, you're done, you graduated, and in record time too. And it's like, oh, that would have been like enough to be like, oh yeah, these kids are like on the up and up. I don't need characters every 15 minutes telling me that like, oh yeah, the characters, they have so much potential. And then there's,
look, you're a smart person. There are people
so
out
bad.
there
It's so bad.
that like, dude, wait, oh, that's right, they have potential.
Oh, that's right, they're like the
I
best
forgot.
ones.
Ah,
They're like the ones with the most potential. Oh, duh. It's so stupid.
100% that there are people that play that game and had that experience and were like, oh man, it's so good. I love this first 2 hours.
It's the worst part of the game is the moment to moment writing, the like dialogue is like,
sounds very JRPG-esque,
Yeah, but it's not like a translation of a game that's like terribly localized. I'm pretty sure it was
Right,
made by
it's
a
just-
company. It's like, oh, the writing just sucks.
No, it sounds like they were aiming to make that like JRPG feeling.
They might have been.
Thought that's like, oh, that's part of the formula, and maybe they're right.
You're probably right that was the goal, because there's other things like when you go into the menus, like in combat, to go and use your items, it opens up like the item menu, and it's just like blue text box with text of all the items.
Like super old school Final Fantasy.
Like
aesthetic.
it's trying to really look like that, and so maybe
Yeah.
like having terrible writing is a
That's just
part of that.
Dude, what I love that aspect of like the game, and
It's
like,
really bad.
yeah, interesting.
And then, yeah, I mean, there's other things like that I don't personally gel with in the writing. Like, like your main side character is just like this really upbeat, like everything. We're the cool guys, the good guys, and like they say it like 6 times, where it's like, oh, his heart is just so warm. His warm heart is gonna help somebody at some point. Like there's like a prophecy, and there's even like another prophecy that says the exact same thing. And it's like yikes.
It would be really cool if the game subverts all these horrible expectations, and it's like, yeah, like his heart is warm, and then like they're bringing that up, and then there's like a bad guy that like rips his fucking heart out of his chest, and lights it on fire. He's like, warm heart, and it's like, Jesus, like what? I mean, that's horrible. I'm not a video game writer, so, but like do something so that, oh yeah, you're setting up these expectations of, oh man, this is kind of corny, and then like build on that. I think would be a really cool way for that sort of game to go.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna. There's been some like really minor stuff in the game that I thought was really cool, like like, and it's a couple writing things too. Like it flows into the writing where it's like, there's this one where it's like, okay, you completed like the first like tutorial main objective, and like we're gonna put you in the story now, and like the guy who's like telling you to get on your way is like, go stand here and say this, and then like get ready or something.
Yeah.
And like your idiot teammate like is like, oh, we say this, and says it, and like this giant like monolithic rock guy just fucking puts a bowl on top of you and then just yeets you into the distance. And it's like, oh yeah, that was like a cool scene. It happened really fast. It looked really cool. The pixel art was really good there. Like it looked really cool. So there's like small things that are like, oh, there's some cool stuff in this game, but the stuff that's bad about it is like, oh, it's really tough to like keep playing because of the stuff that's bad.
So how long did you play it for? How many approximate hours?
Maybe 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Yeah, like low. Okay.
Part of that was also like a good hour, I think I spent in one combat scenario where it was like guys could resummon guys. And so like I got him in like a stage where it's like, oh, let me see how many of these guys I can kill in a single
and so
battle.
You just like kept going.
So I just kept going and going and going, because I was like, oh yeah, and then at the end of the battle I'll get a ton of XP. Because in a game like
and then that didn't happen.
In like Paper Mario, if you level up, you get less XP from like the same enemies, right? So I was anticipating an effect like that in this game.
Oh, the drop off, yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is an early combat. Let me sit in here and let these guys resummon each other like 75 times and just kill them over and over and over again, and get a bunch of XP at the end of the battle, level up a bunch, and then like, diminishing returns or whatever. But like I've done the same thing in like Paper Mario. There are guys that can summon guys, and you let them resummon, and you just farm them in that one battle because they'll give you a ton of XP. But if you were to do that later, they're going to give you 1 XP per drop instead of 9 that you would get when you first started doing it and farming a ton of them. So it's a really cool way to level. But this game didn't do that at all. Like I killed them all, and it was like, you got 128 experience, which is like what I would have got for killing the 3 that the fight started with. Like, and I had died in that fight like twice.
Were you pissed?
I wasn't like pissed, because the game hasn't it hasn't required grinding at any point. Like you're always as strong as you need to be. Fight the guys when you see them on the map. You don't have to go back and fight them again. But I'm glad I got exposed to that early, so now
you're like, oh, I'm never gonna fuck with that again.
Like, oh, okay, if guys are summoning guys, just don't let them do that. There's no benefit at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Sea Stars, I'll probably keep playing it. I don't know that I'll play it again anytime soon, because there's a ton of games to play.
Yeah, there are.
And it's
shout out to Backlogged.
What, again?
This is the first episode, dude. We don't. Nobody knows about that.
Jesus. And then okay, so besides Sea of Stars, I've been playing Nioh still.
Wait, real quick. So your experience with Sea of Stars, are you done? I mean, you just kind of said.
Yeah, I said I would keep playing it, but not anytime soon.
But what's your general? If you could give it a rating at the point that you're at, like, hey, let's say you stepped away. What is it? Is it a 3 out of 5 experience? Really, really sub? I mean, just really normal?
I think it's a 3 out of 5. There's nothing about the game that's good. Like, I mean, there's nothing about the game that like elevates it above.
Right, because a 4 and above is like something is pushing it.
Right.
3 is like, oh, you're you're executing well enough.
I think that there's some benefits to it, that it's like really accessible to somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with JRPGs and stuff. Like,
but it
not
also
hard.
seems interesting that like the game is leaning into like JRPG tropey stuff, and then it's like, and then you're saying, oh well, it could be like a good, almost like an entry point. Like, oh yeah, it's accessible in that way. I'm like, wouldn't you like want
like
the
a more
opposite?
modernized experience?
Yeah, and or either a more modernized experience, or if you're going to lean into those JRPG tropes, like then you're making a game for people that have a bunch of JRPG experience. So then, therefore, the game should be either more difficult or start playing with those tropes more. Instead, it just sounds kind of like, oh no, it's just a JRPG type game.
I wanted to avoid this discussion, but you started talking about difficulty.
I
Because
think this is we've talked about this almost every time. Yeah,
the game does something weird with difficulty, where there's no difficulty options at the start. You basically complete the tutorial, and at the end of the tutorial, the guy is like, "Here, take these special relics and like use them on your journey." And it gives you text. It's like, "Oh, these special relics can make the game easier or harder. Use them if you want." And the first ones you get are like the game of story, like the relic of story mode or something like that.
Oh my god! So it's literally like in-game difficulty options.
In-game items. I like that they wait till you complete the tutorial, so you have a frame of reference.
Huge plus, huge
right?
boon.
Of like, oh, do I need this? I don't know if...
Shout out Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare.
Because they do it in the obstacle course.
Which is also awesome.
It's a great way to handle it.
Yeah, it's one of the best.
Any game that does difficulty options, that's like, hey, get in the game and play
some
our
game
intended
first.
experience first. Like I'm assuming the curve.
And honestly, they should play games should have like the first section, the tutorial, whatever you want to call it, intro, have super adaptive difficulty, where the game is trying to tune the difficulty to what it thinks you should be playing, and then present to the player, this is our recommendation, you can either go higher or lower, kind of thing, Well,
this game doesn't have like a higher or lower. It's just, this is the game. Here's the thing. It's like,
gotcha.
I think the story mode relic is like, you
this
have
is the
double health.
intended experience, and then you have some ways to...
And I think that's a really good way to handle it.
Yeah.
But I
better
also
than
think
most.
it's a really weird way to handle it in a JRPG, because it's like, of all the games that don't need difficulty options, a turn-based game is like number one. That's like, dude, there is no accessibility that you gain.
No I mean, but you said there's some timing. You got
that's
some people out
where
there. Yeah.
But then it's like, well, why don't you just build your game without the timing and make the decisions that you have to make?
I would also think that would be a
tactical?
great setting to be able to like toggle on and off for accessibility, where it's like, dude, literally just remove that aspect if like you're not into that, even if it's not a matter of accessibility for the sake of like, oh, I struggle with that. It's more so like, I just don't want to engage with that aspect of the game. I'm here for the story, and I'm here for the...
Story's really bad, though, is the thing.
Yeah, but dude, I mean, there are people out there that really, really like bad stories. You would argue I'm one of them.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, Sea of Stars, interesting stuff that to do with the difficulty. I really like that they wait until, hey, play the tutorial, do a couple fights, get an idea of what the game's like before you think about, I want this to be easier or harder. I think that's really cool.
I do like that, yeah.
And I think in general, it would dissuade people from saying like, hey, give me easy mode. Like, because you get in, you're like, oh, this seems approachable. That's a really big boon for it.
You're like, oh, I didn't want to get into this topic. By far the most interesting, like, yeah, dude, difficulty in games. Like, we could just have every episode.
It's just so contentious.
Well, it is, yeah, dude. All right, I have a whole aspect of this I'd like to talk about regarding Armored Core. It can either start now or wait.
Get into it. Yeah,
okay,
go ahead and get into it.
I've seen tons of people online, complaining about the difficulty in Armored Core. Even people who are coming from Souls games. And I think it's baffling. They're like, dude, you get to Balteus and it's just this wall. The first major boss. Or like there are even people getting weeded out by the first helicopter boss, Like
at the very start of the game?
Yeah. And it's like, I can't comprehend it because it is fundamentally the exact same argument. It's like, dude, change your build, get good. It is no different than any other FromSoft game and is less difficult than Sekiro. Sekiro is by far the most demanding. Like, you have to play the game this way. Very much. Like, there's some wiggle room in Sekiro. But all the other Souls games, and I would say Armored Core included, not as a Souls game, but just in this, are very much like, dude, you can either get good with the most basic of your gear, or you can play with your gear and use it to help you get good. You know what I mean? Dude, I've literally seen reviews. I watched this one video on YouTube. Shout out, I don't know. And it was showing all these other YouTube videos talking about like the game being too hard, and I was just baffled because of, first of all, From Software's reputation. There's also people that are saying like, oh, the game should just be melee focused. You should have a big laser claymore. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
like,
I would love that. That's how I fought.
That sounds sick.
That's how I've fought all the bosses that I've fought. I've ended up being like, I'm gonna melee.
Melee. The thing is, though, you can do that. Like, you can. It's just, hey, maybe not like right out the start, because like you need to find the gear. But that's no different than a Souls game. Like, yeah, go find the good weapon, play the game, find the gear you want, and then keep going. You know,
I want to push back on a little bit that it's not any different than a Souls game.
Okay.
Because the Souls games outside of Sekiro do have like one core differentiating factor from Armored Core and Sekiro, and that's that you can just smash your face against mobs and get XP and level up until your character is at a point where it's like, hey, I'm so powerful that like you
could grind. Yeah, there's very little grinding. The most grinding you can do in Armored Core is replaying the arena and early game missions to earn money to buy all the early game parts. But even that isn't gonna necessarily get you, like, there are early game parts that are objectively easier to use and stronger, but I think that any build is just like the Souls games. Any build is viable, but I do think you're right that it doesn't have that aspect. Even Sekiro doesn't have that aspect, because Sekiro locks you out of all of the skill trees. Like, I think I don't even know if there's a single skill tree that's available at the start, but you unlock those different, you unlock the Ishin, or I forget what it's called, the one with the Ichimonji. You have the default one that ends with the ability you use, the stab. And you unlock those as you go. So Sekiro is very similar. I think Sekiro is a much harder game than Armored Core. That said, people complained about Sekiro being too hard. Like, very similar. People coming from Souls games came into Sekiro and were like, fuck this. And I think the same thing is happening with Armored Core. But I just think it's funny because the game is so well tuned, and I would much rather play a game that's like, yeah, it's a challenge until it isn't, rather than like fucking God of War 2018, where it's like, I mean, I guess it's a challenge until it isn't, but Jesus Christ, you're just playing with the numbers of like enemy difficulty, and then making me as the player question, like, did I just choose the wrong fucking option at the start? Like, the best way to handle it, I think, is just fucking adaptive difficulty. I think that all games should just be adaptive difficulty. This isn't true. I don't believe all the games should be this way. I think that
if you're gonna have a difficulty option, it should probably be adaptive difficulty.
Yeah, if you're going to worry about it, just fucking tune it yourself throughout the game so that the player is constantly in a flow state. That's it. I mean, that's obviously harder to do because you can't just go, oh, I'm gonna make a new difficulty option, and then that, in the code tweaks all the numbers by some percentage, or even flat changes, or whatever the case may be. Oh, I spawned more enemies. Okay. It's harder to be like, hey, based on what metrics are you checking to see how the player's doing? Is it based on how they aim? Is it based on the speed in which they get through area? Like, there's a lot of factors there. So it's obviously more difficult to implement, or I would imagine. Maybe not. I'm not a game developer. I make websites.
I think it's interesting the way that you framed, I guess, like the difficulty in Armored Core, comparing it to Souls. And you were like, at the end of the day, it's like, get good. And it's worth discussing.
My favorite thing.
It's worth discussing because in Souls games, right, get good doesn't mean mechanically execute.
Doesn't mean be perfect. It literally
means exploit the systems to
It means learn the
Advance,
game. Learn the game is all it means. That is all getting good means. It is not a measure of your physical prowess. It's a measure of how engaged you are. That's it. And to me, that's
using
what makes
a poison cloud in Demon Souls to kill.
shooting poison arrow. Like, dude, even Dark Souls.
That's all a part of getting good.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Exploiting the system to your advantage.
Or on the other end, yeah, just get really good. Fucking let me solo her. Fucking the guy from Elden Ring who co-opt and
getting good means all sorts of things.
Literally just get good is so funny because it just translates to like just fucking play the game, you dweeb. Just keep playing. It'll click. Just keep
figure it out.
Something will click. Whether that's your dodge timing improves, whether that's I found a weapon that I like, whatever it is.
Oh, I want to use magic.
The games really aren't that hard. Fucking Baba Is You is so fucking hard. It's easily the hardest game I've ever played. And dude, nobody's complaining about that. It's a really confusing puzzle game. Dark Souls is a cakewalk. All those games are cakewalk. And now that I've beaten Armored Core, I'm like, oh, that game's easy. I fucking S-ranked every mission because it was like, once it clicked, it's like, oh, actually. And it's the same with Souls games. Like, I could probably do a Soul Level 1 run of any of the Souls games. I mean, it'd be harder, for sure. But, yeah, those games aren't actually difficult. They're pushing you
to engage
with the game's mechanics. And even Miyazaki has said that kind of stuff, where it's like, I'm not aiming to make difficult games. I'm making to make like engaging experiences. And I think, yeah, with difficulty in games, I could give a fuck about difficulty. I really could. I think that there are easy games out there that are awesome. You know, it's not like, games need to be challenging to be good. No, they need to be engaging. You know,
and oftentimes, if you're designing a game from the ground up, and you're like, I want to force people to be engaged with my game, it makes sense that like, I could perceive that as difficulty because I'm trying to play your game not engaged. I'm trying to play your game like it's like every other game I play, like it's Assassin's Creed,
right?
And like, your game's really hard because I'm not engaging with your systems. I'm not engaging with you mechanically. I'm not thinking about your game in the way that your game is presenting it to me for me to think about. I'm thinking about it in my tunnel vision view of video games, and now, oh my God, it's so hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of the things too about Souls games. It's like once you've beat one of them, all of the other ones, all of a sudden, like, yup, I get it.
They click so much faster.
With the exception of like Sekiro and Armored Core, where it's like, there's twists on these.
Right.
But
even Bloodborne, it's like, it's different enough that like, hey, coming into it, you can be caught off guard and stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, you engage with it much quicker because you identify those things. Right. That's like, hey, yeah, you're asking me.
I also think there's an argument on the other end where, Stefan played Bloodborne and he wasn't experienced with Souls games yet. And I think that the Bloodborne clicked for him quicker because he had no preconception of like how the games operated really. And so for me coming into Bloodborne, it was like, dude, I played Dark Souls, or I played Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 2, and then coming into Bloodborne, it's like, it's so different, versus coming into Bloodborne blind, it's like, maybe your lack of experience could actually benefit you in that regard. And I think that's kind of what's happening with Armored Core. I think you have to look at Armored Core, it's just a game. It's not a Souls game. Yes, there are similarities, sure, because it's made by the same company and they have really consistent, I would almost call them tropes at this point, but really consistent, methodologies for how they make games. But if you really come into it open-minded, you're going to have like a really great time, and the difficulty really isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hate complaints about games being too difficult.
Fuck all those people that can't play hard games. Fuck you.
I think there's like an argument to be made for like, an accessibility option, control, whatever. But whatever, dude, it's an action game. It's hard to make a game where a significant portion of it is like a user's ability to respond to a stimulus.
Right.
And like, how do you make that accessible in a way that people are getting a similar experience. It sounds really tough.
Like making a painting for people that like, oh,
Are
dude,
colorblind.
I'm colorblind. Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna have the same experience. I could try to make an experience that does, maybe. Oh, I specifically when I made this tried to make it so that people who are colorblind actually see a version of you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, I do think that that's my biggest argument for games or art is fuck you, games or art. It's not a matter of like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. It's like, leave me alone. Let me make the games I want to make and let me play the games I want to play. Not everything has to be for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting.
If you don't like Armored Core, fuck you.
The difficulty curve in Nioh is also fucked.
Great transition. Shout out transitions.
The game starts so hard where it's like the tutorial. I mean, the tutorial's not super hard, but there's like one fight in the tutorial that's like it's 2 knights, and if you run into both of them and like try to fight them and you drag it like that, you can die a couple times. Not like super hard, but whatever. You get into the first level, and it's like every single time like you meet a new guy. I don't think I talked about this last time, but it's like you're in the first level of Nioh. You spawn on a beach. You go and there's like one guy by himself, and you go and you kill that guy. Probably not much of a problem. He's not much different than the tutorial guys. You go and like the next guy you fight, if you don't like read the prompts, they're saying like, hey, fight guys one at a time. There's 2 guys. And so it's like, oh yeah, you didn't read the prompts, you're dying to those guys. There's 2 guys now. You probably
they
died.
like want you to kite them or pull,
yeah,
like
yeah.
split them
They're
up.
saying
Okay.
fight one at a time. You don't do that, you're gonna get killed by them. So split them up, whatever. The next guy you fight is like a guy with a spear, and it's like the first guy with a long weapon you've ever seen. It's like, oh yeah, you don't know what you're doing against that guy. You probably died. And it's like,
Reminds me
okay,
of Sekiro, the first guy you fight with like the spear, who's like a hard guy, and you like, dude,
you go and you fight
don't
the
have
next guy.
stomp. Yeah.
You go and you fight the next guy, and it's like, oh yeah, that guy, he's like kind of got some armor on, and he's got a big sword. So now all of your attacks don't stagger right away. So you probably died against that guy. And then it's like, okay,
it's just building like, but it's forcing you to like, dude, I have to adapt. I have to.
It's literally every
get good.
single possible situation the game could present in succession. Right after that guy is like, oh yeah, there's some guy, and he's like hunched on his back, and he's like poking at some items, like it's like a wall. Like walls all around here, you go up like a thing, all walls, one little opening in the middle. You go to the opening in the middle, it's like a guy by himself, hunched over. You go and you grab it, fucking 3 dudes come in from the side and just immediately kill you. And it's like, oh yeah, there's ambushes in the game. That was the first ambush you saw, you died.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, you're dead. And it's like, okay, there's ambushes, so now I gotta like,
This
poke
sounds
my way up
horrible,
here.
but at the same time, not like
It's so fast, like it's so quick to go back up.
Okay,
to
yeah, and that helps a lot because
Yeah.
I think trial and error, learning from failure, I think is fine. It's only when you're like, holy shit, I have to do all that again.
It's but it's not a big deal. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, you died.
And it's the first level. They're enforcing this.
You go and you finally deal with those guys. You pull them one at a time or whatever. You go into the room that like it's like a building. It's like a square building in the middle where like the guy was at. He was like at the wall of the building. So you go in the building. A fucking giant demon guy spawns in there. That's the first big demon guy you've ever seen. So you fucking died.
Yeah,
Like,
he's killing you.
Yeah, he does stuff that you've never seen before. So he kills you. That one took me like 2 or 3 times before I figured out like his moves. But like I could have played it way safer. But like
Right.
the way I've been playing Nioh is insane. Like I've been super aggressive the whole time just because I'm like, I know these games. Like whatever, I'm gonna go in and go crazy. Like the one of the bosses that I fought, like it's the second boss in the game. Like I was reading stuff after like I'd beat the first region in Nioh, and I was like, because like I had said previously, we were
You on the
talking about
subreddit?
it. I was like, no, it was in like GameFAQs.
Okay.
I was like, I can't imagine the game getting harder than it like already was. Like it already seems like it's getting easier. It's hard to imagine the game like getting harder again. And I've read people online saying that basically that the game is the hardest like at the start.
Oh, okay.
And that it doesn't really get much harder from that. You start basically breezing through it.
Interesting.
I thought, oh, that's interesting. And a lot of people, pinpointed like the second boss in the game as like that's the hardest boss in the game because it's like the first one that has like moves and stuff that you have to oh yeah, the bosses have fucking moves. Like, this is how you have to play. And I read somebody talking about it and they're like, oh yeah, that second boss was so hard. She killed me like 10 to 15 times. Like Hino Emna or something is her name.
Nonsense.
Sexy
what is
vampire
this?
lady.
Oh, okay.
So it was a good boss.
All right, that's a good clip.
And They're like, oh yeah, I died 10 to 15 times, but I finally got her on like one of my attempts. The fight took around like 8.5 minutes. And I was like, holy shit.
That's such a long boss fight. It's crazy.
The fight that I killed her on was like 35 seconds.
Oh,
like,
Jesus.
I went in, like, that's how all my fights have been with all the bosses.
Just
like,
insano aggressive.
yeah,
yeah.
Hey, you have 6 moves. It doesn't take that long for me to ID
I honestly
them.
think that in action games, it's so valuable. Like even in like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, you know, it's so valuable playing aggressive, and it's so tempting to not play aggressive because, you know, like I know your brother says like, oh, even in Sekiro, like the way he approached every boss was his first attempt was I go in and I watch all the bosses, or no, it wasn't Sekiro, it was Bloodborne. And it's, oh, I go and I watch all the bosses' moves. Like, I just run around, not getting hit, and I just playing super defensively, evasive. And then once I start having an idea for how to dodge, then I come in and I start, you know, playing, you know, I'm like, but the people that are like really good at the games, it's like, dude, I am in that boss's face. I'm fucking slamming him. Like, it's so clearly the best way to play that it makes sense that for someone like you that has a bunch of experience playing these types of games, it's like, yeah, you come into Nioh and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to play that way. I'm just going to go ham. And it's like, yeah, that works a lot. And then when it doesn't,
you
then
need
you pull
to learn
back,
how to
you know?
play that way.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, ultimately, that is the best way to play. And if you're going to fail along the way trying to learn how to play that way, that's fine. You know, it's better than like playing wrong, and then eventually being like, oh, I'm playing wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, this boss fight took me a half hour. Whoa.
8 fucking minutes to
for
beat a
one
boss.
run.
Jesus.
That was the fight length. Yeah, that's insane.
I would kill myself.
It reminds me of when I was playing Hollow Knight and I was doing like the Pantheon of the Gods or whatever the hell that DLC is called. And there's the fight that you do with like the juiced up Hollow Knight where it's the Hollow Knight or the Knight, but he has like the different moves or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you can, because you unlock the area where you can practice against
where
all
you fight all
fights.
the bosses and you can turn on and off the charms or whatever.
Yeah. So I was doing like, you know, whatever that thing is in that game, but I was practicing against that Hollow Knight fight. And I remember someone in my chat was like, oh, why don't you just like stop trying to attack him and like learn how to dodge all his moves first?
Because fuck that,
and it's
dude.
like, because I can't beat him if all I'm doing is dodging his moves.
Yeah,
I have to know how to attack
that.
him. I have to just go for it.
Yeah. Dude, I tried doing that in Armored Core at times. Like, oh, let me try just like watching what this guy does. I can't even fucking help myself. I do it for 2 seconds and then I'm like, I'm going in.
I'm shooting him.
I'm like, next thing you know, I die again. But it's like, oh, yeah, I can't help myself. I gotta kill that guy. I'm not just gonna fucking stand around and let him do his shit. It's a bad strategy, I think. You know, I think it's the wrong way to play video games. And if you play that video games that way, fuck you.
There might be games where that's the right way to do it.
Sure, yeah.
But not any fucking game I played.
Fuck you if you play games that way. You can't play Baba Is You that way, I'll tell you that. I can't. I don't even know what I'm saying.
You can't. I agree with you.
How? What do you mean? You just stare at... I mean, the equivalent would be like, oh, I'm not experimenting in Baba Is You. I fucking just like load in and just stare at everything for fucking 20 minutes until I go, oh!
That's the solution.
Do it first try. That actually sounds sick. Like that sounds like a challenge though. Like that sounds so much harder. Is like not experimenting and being like, and playing out the scenarios in your head as like, well, if I move this over there.
And that's basically Baba Is You if there was no rewind.
Yeah, dude. Just like when you fail, you're like, I gotta fucking... Dude, the rewind...
I have to restart the game.
It would be sick if games like Nioh and shit... I mean, I'm about to explain Prince of Persia, Sands of Time.
I was about to say. Like Prince of Persia.
Yeah, like an action game.
It's not worth discussing.
No, yeah. Fuck that.
What else have I been playing? I've been playing Dark and Darker with...
Oh, yeah. I watched Trav... fucking insano level his sorcerer. Like...
I kind of think that game's awful.
There's aspects that I think look really like fun. It only looks fun to me as a co-op experience, like the way you guys have been playing it. That's any game, right? That's the thing is that like, man,
getting amputated is fun as a co-op experience.
I don't think so. I disagree.
It would probably be fun as a co-op to be like, hey, let's go get our legs chopped off.
You want to do it?
Anything's fun with friends. It's a terrible way to be
Right.
like, oh, it looks fun because it facilitates being with my fucking. You don't need something to
What about
facilitate.
Resident Evil 5? That game sucks solo.
Game's fine solo.
It's all right. Yeah.
It's totally fine.
But it's great co-op. It's one of the best co-op games. I think the difference is that games, games have mechanics built around, multiplayer and stuff, right? And I think that there are some games that do a better job of that. Whereas, like for example, Resident Evil 5, it's like, dude, that game is fun co-op.
The skeletons in Dark and Darker bleed when you hit them. You hit them and spurts of blood come out.
That's sick. There's
it's
blood
stupid.
in bone.
It's stupid.
Isn't there? Isn't there blood in bones? Travis, can you go ahead and check that one for us?
Can you check that, Trev?
He's not watching.
It's stupid. And that stupid design element, it's bled into all elements of the game where it's like, oh, there's oversights.
Yeah, so it's just all over the place. Yeah.
And it's like, okay,
is the game still like in beta or like early access?
I don't know.
Because do you know if it says on Steam?
I don't have it on Steam. They have their own launcher.
What?
Conceptually, there are things about the game that are interesting. The game itself plays like you're stuck in mud and you're playing a game filled with hackers.
That's how it looks
headshotting you.
when I watch you guys play. It's like, dude.
Yeah, it's rough. That's a rough game. There's some ideas there.
Sure, yeah.
But dude, the game itself, that needs a lot of work.
I honestly think I was talking with Travis about this, just like I was like, "Oh, are extraction style games is that your favorite genre?" He's like, "Kinda," or like he's like, "I don't." It is a really good.
He played all the Resident Evil games though.
It's really good.
I thought that was his favorite genre.
Oh yeah,
Resident Evil.
Shout out Resident Evil. Speaking of which, man, there's the PlayStation 2.
Oh, yeah, you played the Ada DLC. You did that this week.
Holy shit! Yeah, I did.
You did that entire DLC.
I beat the. Oh yeah, because I played that last weekend and I beat it by like Monday or Tuesday. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can talk about that at some point.
Yeah, talk about it now. That's what I was leading you into.
Oh, John with the transitions.
Fucking
shout out.
Dipshit.
Okay. Yeah. So I slammed through that DLC.
No, you didn't. You beat it in
twice
as long as
it
takes the average player to beat their first playthrough.
Slammed, not
you did not slam through it.
Slam is not in I'm not talking about time. I'm talking about like the way in which I blasted the
slowly.
Game.
Blasting and slow are not like a blast is an explosion. Thing that happens rapidly.
You never slowly blast your own meat.
Jesus.
Shout out something. So when I say blast, okay, let me back up.
Yeah, please do, because everything
doesn't
you
really make
said
sense.
has been wrong.
Blasting my meat. So my first playthrough was super slow. I played I spent so much time running around looking for items that weren't there a lot of the times. I obviously find items. I think I found everything like that there is in the game. The game's the DLC is very linear, so there's not too much to miss, but there are some sections that open up a little bit. But yeah, I played really slow and methodically, and I according to like how long to beat .net or whatever the hell it is, it took me like 2 or 3 times longer than people report. People said that the DLC is 3 to 5 hours long, and it took me like, I want to say it was like 15 hours or something. Like, yeah, it was a while. Some of that time can be, attributed to leaving the game running or whatever.
Sure.
But very little, especially in this game.
Doesn't PS5 have like an auto sleep mode?
Yeah, but it doesn't kick in for a while. Also, I died a good amount. Like I was playing on the at the time hardest difficulty, the hardcore difficulty, and so I had some parts that I struggled with that took longer. But I thought it was a super great time. It really the best part about that DLC is that it's just more RE4 Remake.
I've heard people say that the DLC as like a like the hours that you get in the DLC are better than the hours that you get like hour for hour in the main game. Like if you were going to play the DLC for 5 hours or play the main game for 5 hours, the DLC is better.
Interesting. I probably disagree with that, but what I will say is that it is that is true for Resident Evil 3 Remake. Like I think that the $10 spent and the number of hours that I put into RE4 Remake Separate Ways are comparable. Where like, hey, they're shorter, more linear experiences with a little bit of puzzle solving, but not really. You know, they're very similar experiences. And I think that the RE4 DLC is better. It's more. It would be if they were the same price. I would pick RE4 Remake. Like if RE4 Remake was a $60 game, yeah, I'm picking that over RE3. And I platinumed RE3 Remake. Like I had a good time with that game.
Isn't RE4 Remake a $60 game?
No, I'm talking about the DLC, which is $10. I'm talking about the DLC in comparison to just a full game. You know, no, I think that RE4 Remake's base game is much more engaging.
Having watched both of them, I think so too. I think the base game looks better.
But it was super fun, and it completed the RE4 Remake experience. Is my favorite part about it. I have some complaints about the fact that like, well, you released it as DLC, paid DLC, you know?
Was Separate Ways not paid DLC on the original?
No, it was, well, I mean, because it was on the PS2 was when it was first released as DLC. And it came out as like, it wasn't downloadable content. It was just like, hey, if you buy the PS2 version, it has Separate Ways. So it was additional
so it was like
content.
Persona 5 Royale or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then all future versions of the game included it, you know. And it wasn't like a big upcharge or anything. You know, I don't think it was upcharge at all. I think like the PS2 and GameCube versions cost the same, but the PS2 version comes with the DLC, or whatever you want to call it. The original Separate Ways is so clearly like, dude, we're just reusing content here to make a little bit more and kind of flesh out the story a little bit. Like it's very basic, it's super short, and it's really not even that good. The remake Separate Ways is awesome. It has unique, like brand new unique boss fights that weren't in the original or the base game of the remake. It also adds I think all of the cut content from base game to remake, or OG to remake. So there's like the gondola section where in the original you hop on a gondola and, you know, there's dudes coming up the other side of the gondola and you have to kind of shoot them because they're shooting at you and you're kind of a sitting duck and you kind of move around a little bit. That was cut from the remake and it's in the Separate Ways DLC. There's boss fights that were cut from the original game to the remake. Those are in the DLC. There's only really like one thing I can think of that like, yeah, that's not there. And it sucked. And, you know, it's kind of there. And it's the boss fight with it or U03, I think is what it's called.
I mean, these are spoilers.
Shout out. Yeah, that boss fight is there now in, the DLC in the remake. But it cut like a section of it. So it's like, yeah, the boss fight's there, but the fight's different. So there's like a mechanic that you don't have to engage with that was in the original. And so yeah, I just had a great time. There was tons of surprises where I was like, holy shit, they're doing, oh my God. And then there were times where I thought like, oh, this is what's going to happen and was wrong. I was like, huh? And something else, I was like, oh, like, so yeah, I thought it was super fun. I beat it. I got all the trophies. I didn't do all the like in-game achievements. I also haven't done that for like the base game, because there's some that are just like, yeah, kill X enemies with this weapon. I'm like, I don't want to do that. But for all intents and purposes, like I 100% of that. I'm done. Like, you know, quote 100%. And yeah, I mean, it took me a couple days, but I beat it 3 or 4 times. So my first playthrough super long, whatever. Second playthrough, immediate, just like, oh, I got the infinite rocket launcher. and just blasted through. It took me like an hour. And then I did one more playthrough that was on the hardest difficulty with no infinite rocket launcher. Because it's like, to get the S plus rank or the S rank or whatever it is, you can't use bonus weapons. I'm like, oh, dang it. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't include the fucking infinite ammo machine gun for some reason.
Yeah, that's odd.
So you just, you have to get to a certain point to be able to like buy it. But like, oh, dude, I just get there, buy it, and then run through the whole game with an infinite ammo machine gun. And just, yeah. So had a great time though, and so that's why blasted through is because like, yeah, my first playthrough was really really slow, but then after
that, did everything.
I blasted through my second 2 playthroughs, literally blasting, and did essentially everything. Yeah. So, and yeah, great time. I would solid 4, maybe 5 out of 5, probably a 4. Like 5, it's great. It does everything perfectly, I think, but it's just not interesting enough to elevate it. I think
that's a big part of a 5 out of 5 game. It's like the ambition of it.
It needs like this, like, oh my god factor, and I think there's a little bit of like, oh shit factor, but that like not.
There's also like I wanted to bring this up when you were playing it, but I just bit my tongue and just watched you play. But like there are elements about it that you're like, oh yeah, that was cool because of the way that it's incorporating stuff from base RE4 that like didn't get translated into the remake.
To like, me as a player.
Yeah, if you hadn't played the game, like the original Resident Evil 4, like some of this stuff isn't gonna like seem necessarily different.
It would just click differently. I think because it all does relate to the base game as well. For the remake, so even those things where like, oh, if I didn't play the original, I wouldn't have that connection. I would have a different connection. Like there's still nice connective tissue there. But yeah, there are things like, oh yeah, cut boss, when like he shows up, I was like, oh, instead of just being like, oh, well, a boss.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's this boss, so
it's cool that there's a stuff in it that's like, hey, yeah, for returning players, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I had a good time with that. And then I platinumed Armored Core this week, which was I think that game might be in my top 5.
That's
after
insane.
I beat it. Yeah, I actually agree that is an insane opinion. But by the end of it, so throughout the whole game, I was like, hey, this is like a solid 4 out of 5 game, like really, really solid, clearly high quality, fun, whatever. And it wasn't until literally the end of my 3rd playthrough of the game that it all clicked in a way that I cannot spoil. Like I refuse to spoil it because it was so good. And I'm sure that other people wouldn't feel the way I feel necessarily about it. It just hit me so good deep inside of me that I was just like, that might be one of the best games I've ever played. Yeah. Like, and then I went through and I S ranked all the missions, which was a good time. And I had a whole separate kind of fun around that, which was like,
weren't you also like raging really hard though?
There were moments where I did rage, but it wasn't actually as bad as it appeared at first. And what really helped was I started, looking into like the metas and stuff and engaging with like more of the online content because I had been avoiding. I had seen a couple like quote spoiler-free reviews and stuff prior to playing the game and during playing the game or whatever that did actually spoil shit, which pissed me off, but whatever, we talked about that last time. Shout out last episode 003. What
episode is this?
This is episode 1.
So it's not 001.
No, this is episode 1. That was episode 0.3. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
It was like beta 3.
Okay.
Gamma, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I when I went to like S rank all the missions, I engaged much more in like, hey, how are other people playing this game, and I kind of found some meta builds, but what was really surprising was just like there's variety. There is not this is the meta. If you want to S rank all the missions, you just use this build. It's like, no, dude, like I found videos of guys doing the exact same build I had been doing the whole game, which or one of the builds because I had a bunch by the end. Now I have like 12 different builds. And they all are little variations of each other, and then some of them are drastically different, but then with variations of those. And it really just made like, hey, when I'm S ranking missions, I start with one, and then I kind of like, oh, this isn't quite working. What's not working about it? Oh, let me try these for my shoulder weapons instead. Like very subtle differences until it got to the point where like, oh, by the end I was just going like S S S S S like first try on all of them because like yeah I kind of knew like I know what the missions are. I've done them, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I know what to expect going in, and I have such a variety of builds now that I know exact, and I could probably even choose the wrong build and still get the S because like also my skill was going up.
And your mech's just stronger overall. You're getting higher tier gear.
Higher tier gear, but honestly, the biggest thing that I think makes the game easier as you go is the OS upgrades. Have you gotten the OS upgrades?
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's you can fucking like literally boost the damage of all of your kinetic weapons or all of your energy weapons or explosives. By the end, I had everything fully upgraded, and it's like, dude, that's a 15% damage increase to all of my weapons, every single one, as well as a 15% damage reduction for all damage I take. Makes a huge difference when you're replaying old missions and you're like, man, that was so much easier this time. It's like,
you're flat and stronger.
Bro, I'm literally just better. Which is kind of a negative in my opinion. But at the same time, it felt good. Like if I think about it, I'm like, maybe I don't like that, but I enjoyed it so much while I was playing it that it doesn't actually bother me or like really affect my overall opinion. But I think that that game, the most surprising part of it to me, and the piece that elevated it from a 4 to a 5, was the narrative. I think that it was so not what I was expecting. That it was that oh my god factor we were just talking about for me, that when I was finally done with all my like playthroughs, I was like, Jesus Christ, that's one of the most unique, fantastic games I've ever played. I wish I could spoil it, but honestly, spoiling it would take me fucking an hour to explain. I tried to explain it to Marlise. I was like, oh, it's so good. You fucking hold on, let me back up. And I tried to like explain it. She's like, oh, yeah, that sounds cool. I'm like, yeah, I can't. You have to be there. You have to just experience the game, play it through, and like see it for yourself, man. It's so fucking good. I was blown away to the point where I'm like, I might like that game more than like Dark Souls. Like one of my favorite games of all time.
It's interesting.
Might be better.
Like, I think of my top games of all time and how weighted that started to become towards like more recent games.
Same.
Where it's like, hey, in the past like 5 years, there have been some absolute
really good
bangers.
games.
And then like, you look at these older games that you're like, hey, these have been like stalwarts of like things that I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this game. But then you play something new and you're like, dang, like how are there still new ideas in this space and like that are getting executed so well? It's crazy to me.
Even like, I think about like Elden Ring and how there's a part of me that wants to say I like Dark Souls more than Elden Ring because I have such a history with Dark Souls. It really got me into the genre. Like I had played Demon Souls, but Dark Souls made me go back to Demon Souls. Dark Souls really changed my perspective on video games, and Dark Souls has some huge problems that I've, been able to gloss over because of my, engagement with both that game and the series and the genre. But man, like Elden Ring's definitely a better game, right? Like, come on.
I don't know about definitely.
I mean, come on.
Well, there's too many. If Elden Ring was, a remade Dark Souls, like in terms of design, like I think there's an argument to be made against like the open world and
sure.
Like, so I don't know that it's just
it's not objectively better, but
tons of things are better.
There are so many things that are better. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Because like I think Sekiro is better than Elden Ring by a lot.
Yeah, and God, that's such a good game.
Yeah, and I think that's their best game. They'll never make a better one. I mean, they might in 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I mean, they might fucking next year. I mean, the DLC for Elden Ring might come out next year or
And just
whenever
be
and it, like,
insane.
holy shit.
I
And
hope the DLC for Elden Ring is like Dark Souls.
it's just like, dude, it's Dark Souls in the Elden Ring.
It's
like,
one giant
you know.
interconnected world thing that's like, hey, we've gotten rid of the open world. You
Right.
go here, and it's like, no, dude, you're in this zone.
It's just one big legacy dungeon with like
Yeah.
interconnected like little zone. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I
be
hope
so
it's Dark
sick.
Souls.
That would be so tight.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
At the same time, I'm also okay with like, oh, they added like an entire second open world. Like, all right, yeah.
No, that's what I don't want.
I would play that though. You would play it
For sure, but that's the explicitly like I don't want that.
Yeah, I get that.
Your world's already big and empty enough.
Yeah, if they do another shout out Doo, they'll I hope that what they accomplish is taking like a zone from the base game, you know, like an area that big or whatever, and just filling it with content the way that like the first like Limgrave, you know, or is that right? Limgrave? Yeah. Limgrave is so full of shit to do. And I think it's easily the best part of Elden Ring is that first 20 to 40 hours, depending on, you know, who you are, like just exploring Limgrave and being like, holy fuck. But when you really explore all of Caelid, explore all of Liurnia, the capital even, they are much more bare. Even though the capital has some of the best things in it, there's not as much in it. And I really love that Limgrave, and it makes sense, they front-loaded a bunch of that stuff where it's like, dude, every fucking direction you look, there's like a thing to go do and items to find and bosses to fight, whatever. So I would hope that if they are gonna do an open area again for the DLC, I hope that it's more like Limgrave, less like Caelid, or less like, especially the ice fields or whatever the fuck that area is called, where it's just like, this is empty. There's like some guys.
It's terrible.
Yeah, that game falls off in terms of the quality and the density of the content. So yeah, I would hope that that's what they do, but we'll see.
I hope it's Dark Souls.
That would be sick.
That's what I hope it is. One giant, essentially like, hey, what if it was a giant legacy? Because that's, I mean, what Dark Souls is.
What if it's literally Dark Souls and you play through Dark Souls
as an Elden Ring character? Sounds sick. Sounds busted. It actually might be worse because you don't have like the crazy hyper armor and. Like,
but you have a jump.
You can jump in Dark Souls.
No, you can jump horizontally in Dark Souls.
You can jump.
Yeah, but I mean, you have a jump. Like a jump.
You can't jump in Nioh.
Dude, watching Trav play Lies of P, I'm like, holy shit! Like, yeah, these games with like no jump. After playing Elden Ring, I went back and played Dark Souls 3, and that's by far the biggest difference in terms of game feel. Couldn't believe, like, oh, dude, like even just like jumping over attacks or doing the jumping attacks.
Yeah,
crazy. Those are OP in Elden Ring. Yeah, I forgot that Elden Ring's coming out with DLC. Like, it's just been so long.
Should come out next year probably.
That game came. When did that game come out? Last year? The year before? Was it 2021 or 2022? It was early 2022.
Yeah, 2022.
Early 2022. Yeah, because that was when God of War Ragnarok came out, and people were like, "Oh, is it Elden Ring or Ragnarok?" Fucking Elden Ring. But yeah, fucking. They've taken so long. It needs to be like insano good. It needs to be like
Dark Souls.
Yeah, it needs to be like Dark Souls. We'll see. Well, how about a quick break?
Break.
We'll be right back after this short intermission.
Break. What's the hotkey for break? Jesus.
Welcome back.
Oh my God.
Welcome back to the Water Level Podcast, where two best friends talk about the video games that they love, hate, and Jesus. That's
the pod.
That's the pod. We got some questions from chat that we can run through here. I'm gonna pull my phone.
Questions from chat.
Yeah, questions from chat. Mainly just Travioli. But hey, let's roll through them. Let's see what we got here.
All right, are you reading all the questions, or
yeah,
are we taking turns?
Let's just why don't you read the first one?
Oh, I thought you were gonna read them all.
I was.
Okay, so from an anonymous chatter, what do you think LeBron's favorite video game is?
I'm gonna go with like Madden 04.
Okay, what's your reasoning?
He plays enough basketball as it is. He probably doesn't want to play basketball games. He probably also thinks nerds are fucking dweebs, so he probably doesn't really like play video games like that. He's not like fucking Jeremy Lin or whatever, where he's like, oh, I play League, or whatever the fuck. So LeBron's probably thinking like, yeah, I don't really fuck with video games. I do love me some Madden 04 though, because it's like a game he grew up with or something, So
he was in the NBA when Madden 04 came out. 2 years in the league.
Yeah, he was still young. He was like
drafted
20.
in 2003. Madden 04.
Younger guy,
I guess Madden 04 would have came out in like 2003, but he would have been drafted.
Yeah, he's younger. Like it just takes him back, So I'm gonna go something like I'm gonna go Madden 04.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Tasmania 1992 on the Sega Genesis.
Oh, why?
Similar to your reasoning, right? Younger, not in the NBA, but also because of his, Space Jam production, that it should be a Looney Tunes game.
Okay.
That's what for sure he would answer. He's thinking about the product.
Oh, he's answering it because he wants to he's like, shout out Tasmania, shout out Warner Bros.
Yep. So that's what LeBron James would say is his favorite game.
Okay. Oh. All right.
What's up? What's up next?
All right, next question. How did you two meet? We were like neighbors, but not really.
Yep. All right, next question.
It's your turn.
Oh, shit.
Jesus. Okay, I got it. When the world ends, what will your favorite activity be? I'm going to go with gaming.
World ends.
When the world ends, I'm going to be a gamer.
When the world ends, I'm going to be dying. So dying is my favorite activity.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense, I think.
Yeah, we'll be dead.
Yeah. Being dead. I'll love that.
Yep.
What if you don't, though? What if the world ends, but you continue? Because the world and you aren't necessarily,
Nope, they are synonymous. That's
okay.
Okay, at Travioli, be sure to give us a follow. We need your support.
That's a good one. That's a good question. Yeah, thanks, Travioli.
Okay, what's up next?
Okay, what guest would you want to come on your podcast someday? I have a good one for this.
Guest would you want to have come on your podcast someday?
I've got my answer.
Okay, what's your answer?
Travioli, shout out Travioli. We want to get Travioli on the podcast.
Okay. I'm gonna go with like Abraham Lincoln.
Oh. Okay.
I think it would be sick. He'd be very confused, and we'd be the only pod that.
It'd be sick. We get him on the pod and fucking pop him in the head.
Kill him.
Yeah, he's like, what am I doing here? And we're like,
we're killing Abe
again. We're doing it. How does this feel?
I was just at a play.
He like teleported here instead of dying, and then we shoot him in the head again. Then he teleports to some
back.
other podcast.
No, he teleports back, and they're like, "Oh my god, somebody shot Abraham Lincoln. We don't know who did it."
And it wasn't John Wilkes Booth.
No, it was fucking us.
Oh, it was Lee Harvey Oswald?
It was us, brug.
I don't get it. I don't own a gun.
Okay. What's your favorite South Park episode?
I'm gonna
You're gonna pick a terrible
That's
one.
a hard one. Yeah, for sure. Favorite South Park episode? It's like either Free Wilsiak or Scott Tenorman Must Die or something like that. Those are the ones that come to mind. I love Canceled. There's a lot of good ones. Probably Free Willsiak. Is that the name of the episode? Probably.
Yeah, Free Willsiak.
That one's so good.
That one's great. The ending of that episode's so good.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. But I also just love that it's like, dude, it's just them being kids. They're so innocent. They're being trolled by some adults or teenager or whatever those guys are, you know. Like it's so that's the perfect type of South Park writing where it's not trying to be topical, which as South Park
it
gone
is
on. But it is. Yeah,
it's about like that probably came out around the time when that was before
SeaWorld,
like
maybe.
the SeaWorld
Yeah.
documentaries. But when SeaWorld was catching flack, like that would have been coming out around then.
But it wasn't too
It's not about SeaWorld catching flack.
right, yes. It's just, hey, it's kind of topical, yeah.
Yeah.
That said, I do love some topical ones. Like I especially love the fucking Goobax episode.
Yeah, that's what I think I was going to name as my favorite is Goobax.
That one works as well today as it did then too. With like, we're trying to like build a wall. I mean, I guess now nobody cared. That's like a thing from a couple of years ago. But still, it's like that episode is going to over time just like occasionally crop back up again. It's like it's relevant again.
Well, it's always relevant.
Immigration.
It's a topic of like, do we want these people that are different than us here or not? And that's like that's a human thing. We're always gonna have that discussion.
No, I just want a goddamn chicken sandwich. You goddamn Gooback.
Chicken sandwich.
He's like, I just want a cheeseburger. Yeah. He's like, chicken sandwich. And then fucking Stan's dad is behind
My favorite part of that episode is when they're doing the montage. It's like, we're gonna make it right, or whatever the song is, and it's like they're doing all the stuff where they're like planting flowers and trees and trying to make the world better.
That's the one with the big gay pile?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And they're like, they give up at the end, and they're
Like,
like, wait a minute.
This is
gay.
This is gay. Yeah, this is way more gay than the big gay pile. All right, we're back to the big gay pile. God, I forgot that was that episode. It's so good.
That's a great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite part of that about that episode is that everybody is presented as completely ignorant in their position.
Oh, yeah, everyone is wrong.
Yeah. That you have people like Stan's dad that are
even
like
Stan, who's like, "Oh, we'll like bring everyone together and make this song." And Stan's like, "This sucks."
Yeah. Like, you have Stan's dad that's like, "Oh no, well, we need to do this because they're less fortunate than us." And then he gets fired and he's like, "They took our germs."
Yeah. So good. Yeah. Yeah, that's an awesome episode.
Yeah, it's great. Willsiak's great. That's great. There's a lot of really good South Park
It's probably
episodes.
Willsiak and the Goobax. Those are probably the two. What was the other one I said? Scott Tenorman.
Scott Tenorman's good. I like the one where they make the Christian rock band, Christian Rock Hard. That's a good episode.
Is that the one? Is that the 100th episode? No, that's
the one where they have to write a book report, and Cartman doesn't want to write it, so he keeps trying to have a flashback, and so he electrocutes himself in the tub.
Jumps out the window.
No, he electrocutes himself in the tub. He like drops a toaster in the tub and puts himself into a coma.
Right,
so
right.
And he's in the coma. Yeah.
Oh, and he's like, and he goes, "I don't want to wait for us to be over." And he walks in and he like kills Paul Revere or something.
Yeah. And that's they're trying to help decide for the war in Iraq or not. And so he goes back to when the
Who cares? 100 episodes.
Just a great episode.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
Well, that looks like that's all the questions we got from chat.
Yeah, that's that segment.
We had a little bit of video game related content in there. But hey,
But you never know what you're gonna get from
Chattioli,
as they call it.
Oh yeah, Chattioli.
Chattioli.
Fucking crying. He's over there crying.
He's emotional.
Yeah. Well, what we could do in the future is, since this is a video podcast, shout out Spotify video podcasts, we could, maybe put chat on screen so that, hey, stuff like that when you watch this.
Oh, but then people
live.
would know, like, because, like, when we're reading these, like, we're making the questions up. And so people would know.
No, dude. Spoiling it. Jesus. Is it Chattioli or Chattioli? I want to go with both.
You said the same thing.
Yeah, Chattioli or Chad-ioli.
Yeah, Chattioli.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's both. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is just kind of, we were talking about the games we played this week, and it, it I was thinking about this actually yesterday, but just the way that we play games and how it differs, and I think this week is a good example where, yeah, I platinumed 2 different games. Like, I fucking slammed my face into 2 particular games until I was done with them. And then, and then I moved on. Versus you, you kind of dipped your toes over here. You're playing a little bit more of this, a little bit of that.
I also played Hearthstone and Phasmophobia this week.
Right.
Didn't
And
even mention
you
those.
probably played some Dark and Darker, right? At least last weekend.
Yeah, we brought that up.
Yeah, but my point is, you played like a good little variety of games, and I, on the other hand, just fucking dunk my face into one, completely rage out at moments, and then instead of moving on and playing something else, no, I just fucking keep playing. I just think it's interesting the way that you, and we've kind of talked about this before, where you like having games that you can return to and keep playing for over long periods of time. Whereas I hate that. I hate having games in the back of my mind.
Well, I don't have them in the back of my mind. It's
they're in your back pocket.
I'm scrolling through Steam and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what am I gonna do? And it's like, okay,
I'll just play that.
Yeah.
That stresses me out. I really like being able to be like, oh, this is the game I'm playing right now, and until I've S ranked every fucking mission, I'm not done.
That sounds stressful, which would explain why you're getting stressed out
I start raging. Yeah.
Because it's just like, oh yeah, the way that you're approaching.
Yeah, the way I play games is fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it really fucked though?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Both of those games, I'm like, hey, I walked out of them 4 or 5 out of 5. I had a great time. All those moments of rage are just kind of left in the dust. I had a good time.
Well, yeah, but you're Stockholming yourself into the game, right? You're sunk cost fallacy. You're like, oh, I spent all this time playing it. That was pretty good, I guess. Like, oh, Jesus.
There is definitely a bit of sunk cost fallacy going in there where I'm like, dude, I got to see it through, I bought the game, It fucking pisses me off, having games dude, I bought Lies of P early access and didn't even play it because I fucking was too busy playing something else, but I was like, well,
yeah,
maybe I'll play this.
Lies of play something else before I play this game because I was already playing different things before I purchased this game. So I've got to complete those. But then after I complete those, now I can play anything. And I already have a bunch of other stuff that I want to play. So I don't know if I'll even play this yet.
So what I wanted to ask you is, what do you see yourself playing beyond Nioh and some of these games you've picked up? What other games are on your horizon? Well, I gotta fix this light. Oh, look at this pose I'm doing. Jesus Christ! Hold on, we gotta fix the light.
Jesus Christ!
Oh,
the fuck!
Oh,
what the fuck is he doing?
Oh, we're fixing the light.
It's
a lost cause. That light is it's just gonna be like that.
Jesus.
It's no big deal.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So what are the games?
Dwarf Fortress.
Just another game on your. What game that you haven't played?
Dwarf Fortress Adventure Mode.
No. Just what else? What else?
That's really all that I'm eyeing. I want to play Dwarf Fortress. I kind of want to play Crusader Kings, but there hasn't been an update to that. And there's some bugs in it.
Are there any games that you haven't played that you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to playing that? Even games that aren't out. Are you going to play Spider-Man 2?
No.
What?
The first one sucks.
But the second one looks so good.
The second one looks fine. I think it looks well produced. I don't know that it looks like it's good. I don't like those kinds of games.
Yeah, I feel that.
Open world action games that are, objective to objective. That's like, hey, okay, go here and go do this. And then it fucking disappears from your screen. And then you're done with that. Yeah. I don't like playing checkbox games. That's like, hey, go through the game and check all the boxes. And then
but what about narrative games like Spider-Man?
Yeah, the narrative's gonna blow because all video games have garbage stories.
Except for Armored Core. Shout out From Software.
Yeah, shout out What Remains of Edith Finch. There's no games have good stories. There's
What, dude? Resident Evil 1 with the
that game doesn't have a story. What?
with the, you know. What about Resident Evil 8? You really like that game?
Yeah, the story's awful. The game's sick. Story is
That's
terrible.
a good game.
Story's terrible. Games don't have good stories. So there's no like, oh yeah, I want to play that. Get that story. I'll go watch a movie if I want to watch. If I want to get a good story.
Yeah.
And I don't really like watching movies, so I'm not even gonna get a good story from that.
Most movies do suck. I am interested to see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie coming out next month.
Oh my god, no, you're not.
Yeah, me and Marlise are gonna go see it.
Oh my god,
I'm pumped.
Jesus.
What? It's gonna be the first good video game movie. What other ones have there been? Assassin's Creed.
What about the Warcraft movie?
I think I saw that.
What about Pokemon 2000, the one with
Ooh,
Lugia?
that's not what we're talking about though.
That's a video game movie.
That's a fucking.
Pokemon was a video game first, therefore all derivations of the IP are a video game. Whatever.
Yeah, they're all bad except for Detective Pikachu, which is also a 3 out of 5.
What about video game? Oh, there is a game. There's a Stellaris game that they're making. It's Star Trek but Stellaris. It's like people are like ripping off the Stellaris engine, or it's like,
oh really?
Yeah, or like
so
Paradox is giving it.
Is it like, oh, it's not like a mod?
No, it's a game. It's a full-fledged game. So it's supposed to be like basically Star Trek TNG.
So this is a game you're interested in playing?
Yeah, I'll play that for sure.
Nice.
That's the only game I can think of.
It's a good one.
Yeah, that one looks sick.
What about the other one that's like Cultist Simulator but not?
Oh, I already have that game.
Oh, have you played it?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's Book of Hours.
Book of Hours. Is it HOURS or OURS?
Wait, spell them again?
HOURS or OURS?
Oh, hold on.
Like, is it Our Book?
No, it's like time. Like
Hours. Hours.
Yeah. Well, but yeah.
Ours.
But yeah. That game's really weird. There are elements of it that I think are really cool. It's basically like it's a single player board game, and like the board is the whole game, and like the way that you move around the board is kind of neat, and like you expand the board by doing stuff, and like it's kind of interesting compared to like Cultist Simulator, where it's like it's a fucking board, and it's a table, and like all your cards or whatever are just on the table, and you have all the timers that you're putting cards into or whatever. Book of Hours is like, no, the table is like the map of the game, and you're like moving around the table, and all your cards are like stored off table, like you have like a hand basically that this is where all your cards are, where you can put stuff. Very different, like presentation wise. There are elements of Cultist Simulator that I like a lot more, where it's like Cultist Simulator is a ticking clock. You're constantly losing in Cultist Simulator, and you have to be doing things that are giving you the resources so that you're not dying, or that you getting caught or whatever by the police because you're running a cult. Book of Hours so far has seemed like, by comparison, completely chill. Like there's no like, oh, I'm losing in Book of Hours. It's just like, no, go explore the board and go do stuff and figure out interactions and stuff like that. And it feels less gamey because of that. That it's like, oh,
Gotcha.
like I'm not constantly losing, so I feel like I feel weirder about engaging with stuff because I'm like, when I get to a point and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do next, the answer is always just like, well, go scroll all the fuck around and go figure out like what you haven't found on the board that you can like interact with. Compared to Cultist Simulator, where it's like Cultist Simulator has these really cool phases of like figuring out how the game works, and like taking the next step, where it's like, okay, like my first step in Cultist Simulator is like, it's like, oh, like you're burning money just like periodically, so you need ways to make money. So you're like, oh, okay, well I can work to make money, and you figure out ways that you can make more money off of your work, and you're advancing, but as you're advancing, the threats are also growing, and so you're in this constant state of like, okay, I want to take the next step forward, but I have concerns because I don't know that I have the resources to do so. So like I'm trying to, like taking these really iterative steps and like really dipping my toes in things to see and play around with and like making really conscious decisions about like how far do you want to push something before you like really get into it and like figure stuff out, because you don't necessarily know where these events are going to go, and the repercussions, maybe you lose the fucking game and you have to restart and set all this stuff up again that you've set up. And it's like, okay, Book of Hours doesn't have any of that. So the whole like game side of it is like, it's kind of just feels like a single player interactive experience, less so than like a game. Like I don't feel like I'm playing a game. I feel like I'm just exploring a thing, and it's like, oh, neat.
Which sounds like more what I might like. Like you really like systems, in games.
That's what a game is. It's a series of systems.
Yeah, I like it when those systems are abstracted enough that it's hard for me to engage with them directly. I like them to be more background.
I don't know that there are like I don't know that there's a fail state in Book of Hours.
Oh yeah, interesting.
And so it's like
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really weird. There's things about the game that I'm like, hey,
that's cool.
This would be really cool in Cultist Simulator. In a fucking game. But I mean, I'm still really early in Book of Hours. I didn't play it like a ton, so maybe like I'm early enough that the potential for fail states hasn't presented itself.
Gotcha.
But that seems odd.
Yeah,
weird game. I don't like it as much as Cultist Simulator. It's also reusing a lot of assets from Cultist Simulator, which is really weird.
Is it made by the same people?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I think it's like Cultist Simulator, Sunless Seas, Sunless Skies, and now Book of Hours.
Have you played all of those?
Yeah.
And Cultist is your favorite?
Sunless Seas is also pretty cool, but yeah, Cultist Simulator.
Are they all pretty similar games?
No.
No?
No. I mean, Sunless Seas and Sunless Skies are very similar.
But they're not like Cultist Simulator?
Not at all.
Okay.
Cultist Simulator is a fucking board game.
Oh, I didn't know what Sunless Seas was, or Sunless Skies at all.
Yeah, that's like, you sail around, and, I mean, you interact with stuff. They're similar in the sense that, like, there's a ton of reading.
Oh, okay.
And that, like, yeah, there's some similarities in, like, the way that, like, you beat the games. It's very like player knowledge driven, like getting to an end, like having beaten Cultist Simulator like a couple times now. It's like, oh yeah, I can get any ending I want without much effort. Like getting to a point to understand how to accomplish that is like a lot.
Interesting.
And yeah, Sunless Seas and Sunless Skies are really similar, where you can spend a lot of time just dallying around, not really understanding what's going on or how to progress towards an end state.
Gotcha.
And yeah, they're interesting games.
Yeah, they're definitely like types of games that I've ignored. I don't know, but like I ignored Slay the Spire for a long time.
That game's amazing
because I was just like, oh, I'm just not into like deck builders or stuff like that. Turns out I really am, or at least I really like Slay the Spire. So then it's kind of opened me up to like, oh, maybe I would like those other games. Also, like Diablo's, I thought that, that ARPG formula type game was something that was just outside my wheelbox. And then, is wheelbox? Do people say that?
No, wheelhouse. Outside my wheelhouse.
I like outside my wheelbox. Let's rename the pod.
To what? Water box?
Outside my wheelbox.
Water the box?
There's no water. But it turns out like, oh yeah, I really like Diablo 4 and then Diablo 3, and then I played a little PoE and was like, oh, I actually might like that more. Super excited for PoE 2, though. Can't believe how long that game's going to take to come out, given how much of it that we've already seen. I don't know how I feel about like such incredibly long development cycles in games. Obviously, they can result in really, really amazing games that have had years and years and years to develop. But more importantly, I don't know how I feel about like the media cycle for such long running development games. Like, dude, what do you mean? What do you mean here? Look at all this stuff that we have from Acts 1, 2, and 3 in PoE, and talking about the end game and all this shit. Oh yeah, the game's not coming out for another 2 years. Like, what? even Elden Ring's DLC, dude. Like, what? I like it when games just fucking like are announced and like, yeah, dude, that's coming out in 2 months.
I can understand it for a game like PoE, where it's like, hey, by advertising our shit several years before it releases, we can continue to get people engaged in like our existing game, Path of Exile, and get people in and spending money. But for a game like Elden Ring, where it's like, yeah, dude, we're making DLC, we're not going to have it for 3 years. It's like, why the fuck did you even say anything? Nobody's going out and buying Elden Ring and being like, I heard they're making DLC in 3 years.
It doesn't build hype, I don't think. I mean, it creates hype in the moment, but then that hype dies down, and then like the hype has to build again.
The best is like when like the Fallout announcements and stuff, and Skyrim, where they're like, they do the show, and whenever they do it in like July, and then they're like, yeah, it comes out in November.
Yeah,
Here it is.
I think like with like 6 months is fairly decent for a you know, what would you call it, release cycle, media press cycle. I think that 6 months is my limit for care, and even that's long. Like 6 months, dude, your game comes out 6 months from now. I am gonna forget after a month, and so there's gonna be a handful of months there where I'm just like, oh, I forgot that you even announced that.
But we talked about the Elden Ring DLC today.
So yeah, it's just because we were talking about Elden Ring though, and then it's like, oh man, when's that deal? And I said earlier, I'm like, oh, like I forgot. Yeah, I forgot about that. Like, come on, dude. It's gonna have come out 2 years after the base game. It's already been almost 2 years. That game came out in like March of 2022.
I think they're gonna cancel it.
I don't think so. I've seen some stuff. It probably wasn't super recently, but again, like relatively recently, about like updates to the game and blah blah blah. And also, did you know that Armored Core and Elden Ring are made in the same engine, and it's been the same engine since fucking Bloodborne?
They look like they're made in the same engine.
Yeah, they do. It's just wild to me. Whatever. That's a slight off, slight tangent. What I'm excited for, probably more than any other game coming out anytime soon, is the next FromSoft game, which the leaks have been that it's Project Spellbound, and that it's going to be an Elden Ring style game focused on spellcasting with melee weapons.
I don't think FromSoft is making another game.
We made Armored Core 6, and we're all going to go kill ourselves.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's cultural sensitive stuff. Like, dude, you should
cut.
You shouldn't
cut.
say that.
We'll be right back. Yeah. I would be blown away if they don't make more games.
Yeah, they're
you never
done.
know. I mean, dude, I'm pretty sure that people thought when Elden Ring or before Elden Ring came out, it was after Miyazaki after FromSoft made Dark Souls 3. Remember they said something like, yeah, we're done making Dark Souls games, and people were like, oh my god, what are they gonna do next?
I mean, they're done with
yeah,
Dark
they're
Souls.
done. But people took that in the sense that, like, dude, like, this style of game is dead. And it's like, dude, they came out with Elden Ring. It's the same fucking game. It's just a different brand. Like, they just wanted a new narrative to fuck around with and, like, some new concepts. Like, and I think it's going to be the same thing with, like, oh, yeah, like, they're not making Elden Ring 2.
No,
but they
it's
are
going to
make
be Elden Ring 2.
Project Spellbound. Yeah, it's Elden Ring 2. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
What would be cool is it would actually make sense because it's Project Spellbound. It's like a very blue tinted, like in the leaked artwork and stuff. It's all about like, spells and stuff. Like, hey, what if it's based on like the Ronnie ending? And it's like, yeah, that's the canonical one where, hey, it's the Age of the Stars. And yeah, the next game is, yeah, it's thousands of years after Elden Ring. And
no, it'll be before Elden Ring.
What the fuck?
It'll be Elden Ring 2. It'll happen before Elden Ring because time is convoluted in Drangleic or whatever.
Trav says the next step is obviously a Souls MMO, and I'm all for it. I would play a Souls MMO if they did one. I think Elden Ring is the closest they've gotten, and it's not even close to an MMO. But
I wouldn't play Souls MMO.
you wouldn't play it.
No, I would burn down.
You'd fucking kill yourself.
I would burn down FromSoft's
Shout out
studio.
Japan.
Shout out to video game develop. Oh, is that a video game developer? Is that an anime studio that somebody burned down their building?
I don't know. It
That
sounds
happened.
familiar.
Shout out Japan and arsony.
Jesus Christ. Good Lord.
What else is nothing else is coming out? There's nothing on the horizon.
Spider-Man, and I'm not gonna play that.
Yeah, you are.
Trav says it was an anime studio.
He would know. Chattioli.
Weeb. Shout out the anime king. Trav's gonna end up being our new sound guy. He's dying for it.
Our new anime guy.
Yeah, anime guy. He'll be on the pod at some point. He's gonna be popping off sound effects. It's really gonna bump up, I think,
Like,
the fucking the Discord one that you have. That's the fucking just blown out to fuck horrible. Yeah, I think that would be sick. I'd also love like a little Mr. Krabs laugh. You know, like a little something like that. I thought of another really good sound effect earlier today. Hey, you know, if any sound effect, you know, ideas that that you guys have, you know, feel free to drop them in. I don't know. We don't really have like a
chat.
forum.
You can send.
Tweet us.
You can send MP3s to our X.
X us at Water Level Pod.
Waterlevelpod.com.
But that's not right.
Tweet us.
I could get that domain. The
get
problem, you know, this is an annoyance I have, is Google Domains is dead. They sold their domain service to Squarespace. So I have to switch to a new domain provider for all my future. Bless you. I have to switch to a new domain provider for all the new domains I want to buy. And so I'm dragging my feet because what the fuck, man? I head over to Namecheap or something. Shout out Namecheap. Shout out Squarespace. Shout out I don't know, Pokemon. Oh, here, check it out. We got
shout out Pokemane. Love
Pokemon.
to have you on the pod.
Oh, yeah, that would be sick. No way. She's coming? That'd be tight. Trav said he's going to ruin our podcast.
But it's already bad.
Well, is it? Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah.
Wherever you're watching or listening, let us know. You know, how we can improve the pod. You know, we're looking for.
We're looking at improving our guest lineup. We've got some ringers.
We got this beautiful spot right here on the couch. Like, look at how much room. You know, obviously, it's not. You know, there's not that much room. But you know, I could scoot over here.
Make some room.
We could probably have room for your dad if we
like
if we
this.
kind of sit like this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Your dad would be an
Someone could
awesome
fit there.
guest. Like a really random. Like, all right, on today's episode, we've got John's dad.
What
and
would he? I mean, sit here and play Pokemon Go.
we could talk about Pokemon and Pokemon Go. We could just have him on for a segment. It wouldn't be the whole 2 hours.
We could have him on here for 3 hours talking about his Pokemon Go strategy.
He could tell some good stories about like poop and stuff. He's got some good ones.
Yeah, great. That's what we need on our video game podcast.
I think that it would really help elevate the brand. You know, water level. He could talk about the water level of his toilet after he's done shitting in it or something. You know, in case you can't tell, we're devolving. We've run out of topics, and we're coming up on our general 2 hour length.
I got a 2 hour length.
Mine's about one. I got about 1 hour as a length.
Shout out 2 hours of length.
Shout out Viagra and shout out Japan again. Can we get a round of applause for Japan?
Let's go.
No, Trav, can you play the sound effects, Trav?
Oh, yeah. Nihongo.
We don't need the clap anymore because the video and audio are tied in the file. So that's probably gonna do it for today, right? You got anything else?
No.
Our lights are all fucked up. This whole podcast it's all fucked up.
Episode 1, baby, doing it live.
Episode 1 official. I'm gonna post this on Spotify. You know, eventually.
No, you won't. doing this for 3 months.